everyone, you are listening to the Magic Hour. Today we're talking about shamanism with the magical healer, author, teacher, and modern day shaman, Itzhak Beery. He has written 3 books on shamanism and teaches classes around the world. Itzhak is here to share with us how he got into shamanism and some tips for anyone who can start using shamanic practices in their life today. Hey everybody, Shireen here. Welcome to the Magic Hour. If this is your first time listening, then thanks for coming. The Magic Hour drops every Sunday for your enjoyment, and show notes are found on mylittlemagicshop.com, our official sponsor. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed, Spotify, or iTunes. You can also follow me on Instagram at mylittlemagicshop and Facebook. All links are in the show notes, so let's get to the show. Our guest today is modern shaman, author, and teacher Itzhak Beery. He started his journey in shamanism over 25 years ago. Welcome, Itzhak. I'm so thrilled to have you.
I'm so happy to be with you.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. I read on your bio that you were a skeptical atheist. Can you tell me a little bit about your life before shamanism?
You know, I was born in Israel, in a kibbutz, which is a commune, communist commune or Zionist commune of people who fled Europe because of the Nazism and the fascists, where we are experiencing it now here, that they were afraid for their life and they wanted to go to a place where it's a little safer and return to the old culture, old land that the Jews were driven away from. And with this dream, they dreamed of becoming farmers again, agriculture, to work the land. Because in Europe, one way that they control the Jews is not giving them their possibility to work the land, to become farmers, because they didn't want them to have any kind of title on the land, which is kind of similar to what Black people did here in the United States. We're disconnected from the land. And so there was a big desire in the Zionist movement to establish farms, a collective farm, so people would live in a totally different way that they lived in Europe. And so they denounced the religious part and they adopted really more of an agriculture culture. That's where I grew up. I grew up on the slope of a mountain, Mount Gilboa, that was written in the Bible. We basically celebrated the holidays, the seasonal holidays, harvest, the new moon, the new beginning of spring, the darkness, what we call Hanukkah or Christmas. Or we really celebrated in many ways what shamanism celebrated. We didn't know, we didn't have a name for that. And we also were very, very remote. So we had a lot of wild animals all around us, and we were very close to the elements, to the rain, to the sun, to the fire. We had a lot of fires on the mountains. And so we grew up really very much in nature. And of course, when I grew up, I wanted to be in town, in the biggest town, because I was an artist. I was a painter, and I moved to Tel Aviv, and I studied art, and I studied dance, and I studied music, and all of that. And I lived there in Tel Aviv for a few years, I think 7 years or something like that. And then my wife and I moved to New York to further our art education, and I had an art career here in New York. My advertising agency to support us. We raised kids. When I arrived to around the age of my 30s, I started to feel like really there's something is missing, that I didn't really want to do advertising for brands that I didn't really believe in. I did work for Gucci and Revlon and Ferragamo and other places like that. I did small advertising, I didn't do the big advertising, but I was involved in all of that, and I did also advertising for small companies. It was exciting in the beginning, but at the end, I felt like I really contribute to some waste for something that does not really make any difference. And I think that, thank God for midlife crisis, because then you start to ask questions, what the hell are we doing here? Why are we doing what we do? And so I in the late 30s, I was starting to feel depressed. I started to feel, it doesn't make any sense what I do. And I really started to feel that I really need to understand the meaning of life in many ways, which is what the 40s are. I happened to read a book about shamanism by Hank Wesselman, Spirit Walker, and you're all welcome to read it.
It too. You
it's very
recommended it to me in class.
it's very topical now for what we are experiencing now in global warming. And I really felt like so many of my questions with these books. He wrote fabulous books about all of that. It's a trilogy. In the book, he was mentioning a workshop with Michael Harner, the guy who created the course shamanism. I was not aware of shamanism at all. I never really thought that I have any kind of spiritual inclination. It's not that I did not have experiences. We all have experiences. I had dreams that materialized. I had feelings that I knew things, and I was always very attracted to people who do this kind of work. But I always felt like other people have that, not me. Why me? A guy from kibbutz, never had any kind of training in that. And
Minus the whole you lived in nature and we're kind of like living like so connected with nature and animals. So it's like you did, but I get it though.
well, I didn't pay attention to it because it was very natural for me.
Yeah.
But I never really associated it with a quality that I have within me to see spirit or to work with spirit or do healing work. And then in this workshop, I started to see that that I can go doing journey work like you did too, that really can help other people. That was like a revelation.
Yeah.
And I started to understand that there is more to the world than the world that we see. Actually, the world that we see is the smaller part of the whole world, of the cosmic world, which was a great revelation for me. And then I took another workshop with John Perkins, the guy who he did a lot of trips to Ecuador and to the Amazon, to the Andes, to work with his teachers. And I took a workshop with him, and he suggested that, or told us that he's doing a trip to Ecuador. And I said, I gotta go. I just knew it. I didn't know what it was about, but I just, like in my gut, I knew that I have to go. And of course, I had all the excuses why not to go, because I didn't have the money, I didn't have the time. I have employees in my advertising agency, I had clients with deadlines. And I said it would be totally crazy to leave people now for 2 weeks and just go to the Amazon and to the Andes. But I just had this incredible gut feeling that I have to go. And I didn't listen to my family that screamed that I should not go. And I went. On that trip, I met a person that later on became my teacher, Jose Joaquin Pineda from the Andes. I also went to the Shuar, and I had my first medicine on ayahuasca, Natema trip or journey. And I came back from that trip, and I was like totally transformed in many ways, but I was also very depressed because these experiences that I had was so overwhelming that I saw incredible visions that were correlating to our world, and I couldn't put these two differences, the two worlds together. And that's really happened to a lot of us. And sometimes we think that our dreams and visions are separated from our own reality, but it's actually not. I mean, if you can hold that idea. But anyway, so I walked like that for 8 months. I was like really, really depressed. I mean, really, I just like couldn't put this two things together because I had these experiences and I had physical experiences from those visions and with the shamans and I met the jaguars and all of that. So it was like really overwhelming.
And then I imagine that, like, once you got back, it was also like now you're back into the real world and you're expected to, go back to work, deal with your employees, have dinner with your family, and just like kind of move on for this, which I imagine is completely really difficult to balance that.
Absolutely, so overwhelming, and I think that's why I'm telling people that before they go to the Amazon, before they go to all these experiences, they really have to learn more about shamanism and working with spirit so they can ground themselves, that when they come back it would not be so overwhelming. And that's very typical of people who are never done this experience. And I already had a few experiences in shamanism. Like I took a workshop with Michael Harner a few times and John Perkins, so I had a way of dealing with it. But for people who go there unprepared, I think that could be quite a shock.
Yeah, I can absolutely imagine that. I feel like that's probably one of the reasons why I'm like, I really wanted to go with you this year, but then, COVID happened. And I was like, I'm going next time you have it. Like, I'm going to figure it out. But I did have like this fear inside that, if I went, like, I would go and then the whole world would change or shift inside of me. And then I would come back and like just want to quit everything. But I mean, hey, I lost my job now, so like now I'm like, there's nothing to lose.
But you see, the world never really changed. It's the way you see the perspective
Yeah,
of your life, how you see the world change.
yeah,
And I think in many ways, the world is just expanding, or your consciousness expanding, your awareness expanding, and you start to understand that everything that we see, everything that we do, is just basically illusion,
yeah,
or a way for us to deal with energies, or and to perceive it in a different way.
yeah,
In other words, it give you another way of seeing the world for what it is, or really what it is. And that could be frightening, especially if you if you grew up with certain
yeah,
restrictions and belief systems. So all the belief system, in many ways, not all of them, but many of them fell apart.
yeah,
So when I came back to New York, I decided that not going to be doing advertising for consumer companies. I would do only work for nonprofit organizations to do good in the world. And slowly, I just got rid of them, and I started to work only for the ASPCA and for refugees and for all kind of different organizations that help people. And that was my contribution. And I think that was is I think that is a great example for people who think about changing their life. They don't really have you don't have to change what you do, but you have to change the focus of what you do.
yeah.
So if you do advertising, use all the tools that you have, or that I learned, and all of that, to promote what you believe in. So it's not a waste. So you don't have to be totally destroy your life, but you have to direct them to what works for your belief system.
Yeah.
I think that was very useful experience for me.
Yeah, I really, really love that you say that because I think often, sometimes people feel a little bit skeptical or nervous about, doing this deep healing work because they feel like it's going to blow up their entire existence. And I feel like, I don't think that that's what it necessarily has to mean. Like, it's really about finding a different perspective on what it is you do because there has to be some reason why, at least I'm a believer that there's some reason that you had those previous experiences, like they were necessary for you. Like, even looking at your journey, like you grew up like so surrounded by nature, like really in tune with, the seasons and all of this stuff, and at that time it was just kind of like how you lived. But I'm sure that, especially once you started really working in healing, you're like, oh wow, that was wonderful, that's an experience I can lean on. And then even with, with advertising, first you start working with companies that you're really passionate about and that are contributing to the world. But I think eventually that same advertising skill helped you probably launch your healing business, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But I love that you're making it very clear that you don't necessarily, like, it's not like everyone doesn't have to jump off and be like, I'm going to blow up and like I'm going to be a healer. Like, you can, there's so many different ways that you can contribute to making the world, a better place. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and also I think that was very helpful was that when I realized that I could do healing work, I took the example of the indigenous shamans. And the indigenous shamans never really worked full time as healers. They always have the 9 to 5 jobs, or the daily work, the play, the job that makes them money. And when they do the healing, is second part of them, which is a great teaching, because one of the things that happened to our people, to people here, is that they want to be healers, they want to work full times, and they don't realize that because they're so dependent on their clients,
Mhm.
they make compromises.
Yeah.
And when they make compromises, they're not really doing spirit work.
Mhm.
And so if you have another job, another source of income that you're not totally dependent on the healing, then you don't look at your clients as a source of money in the same way that in many ways therapists do. You know, social worker or therapist or psychotherapist, but they have a like an ongoing income source. We don't do that like that. We always we in the shamanic work, the idea is that you come to us in time of need. We do our job and we send you out to the world. We don't want you to be dependent on us. We want you to become independent. That's the proof of the healing. In the same way is the healer part here in our culture. We don't want people to work from 9 to 5 and become a burden. So I did that transition throughout many years. It's only the last 5 years or so that I moved fully into more of the shamanic role. For many years I tried to keep both the advertising, marketing together with the shamanic healing, and in the same space. So it kind of like changed hands sometimes. It was kind of strange for many of my clients, but that's what it was. And so the transition was very seamless. And even today, I don't really do healing all the time. I only do it 3 days a week. And then the rest of the time I teach, or I write books, or I do other things. But I don't put all the eggs in one basket, because first of all, if we talk about healing is a very difficult and very dangerous job. I know that when my teacher used to tell me that, I used to laugh at them, because what do you mean? You're doing it so easily. But it takes incredible toll, energetic toll on the person, because we are all absorbing energies. And if we don't replenish it, if we don't protect ourselves, if we continually getting tired of doing it, at the end it takes toll on our physical, and we get sick. And usually the lifespan of a healer could be about 7 years.
Wow.
So it's very important to, the first 3 years you put everything in it, and then you're like a little slower, and then you're like all of a sudden you start to feel yourself that you're getting sick. And that's why I think it's very important for any kind of a healer, shamans, or whatever it is, to create balance, to not to be dependent on the healing, so you could be more objective instead of subjective, that you would not be dependent on that you have two sources that can supplement each other and create balance in your life, and also to really practice self-care.
Oh, I love that. I think that's such a great point, just because, like, you are giving and sharing with another person when you're doing healing and you're stepping into their energy. So making sure that you set up appropriate boundaries for yourself and balance is so important. I just want to go back to okay, so you just got back, and you're trying to navigate this new world with this expanded consciousness. Like, so how did you start getting grounded? Like, how did you start to, I know that you said, you went and you started changing taking on different clients, and that was one way. What are some other ways that you started to kind of, step more into connecting the two worlds?
So I have to confess to you that I never believed that I have it, that I can do it. So I remember that one time Don Jose Joaquin Pineda came to New York, and I went to visit him in way deep in Queens, where he stayed with his daughter. We were walking on the street, and he stopped and he said, "Are you doing healing?" And I looked at him and I said, "Me?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "No." And he said, "You should." And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, you should." And I said, "No, I'm not a healer. I can help you, but I'm not a healer. I don't think of myself as a healer and I don't know anything. We started to work together. I mean, we were already working together. I was basically helping him, assisting him in, inviting people for healing. And I was sitting as an apprentice, but I never really thought that I have any of these. So it took me a really long time. I mean, 3 years he was like poking me and pushing me. And I call myself the reluctant shaman. Never really believed that I have, even if I did great healing, even if I did all these visions and all the stuff that you read in the books, I never really believed that it's me.
Wait,
So
who did you think it was?
I don't know. I mean, I never really, and I still do in many ways. I don't think that it's me. I think that it's coming from spirit or coming from another source. In a way, when you do this healing, you transform. You become a channel. You're becoming you. It's another part of you. And of course, I feel more confident now. But every time that I do candle reading or every time that I do limpia, I'm still thinking that maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe this time it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't go there in a cocky way, in like arrogant way. I still so surprised that it's working.
Yeah.
And in many ways, I kind of like it in a way because
Keeps you humble.
it keeps you more humble and more in touch with the miracles of the magical part of that shamanic work, which is truly I mean, I can explain it in my mind, but there is so much other thing that it's not explainable. It's just really miracles. Because when you change that energy, you don't see the energy, but when you do, you've been to the classes, you understand when you move all of this energy and bringing in,
Yeah.
it actually works. We don't know how. I mean, we think we know how, but it's still there's an element of magic. And going back to the skeptical part, before I went to teach in Poland, I think it was 5 years ago, so maybe more. It was my cousin let me know that there is a letter that was written about my grandfather, what he was doing. Now I met him when I was like really very young in Israel. They brought him from Poland. He was the grandfather of my mother, and he was a Kabbalistic rabbi and a
Oh,
healer. But I never knew all of that. That he was healing, and basically, in many ways, I have his DNA. I'm following my ancestors in doing this work. And the interesting part about that was that he he devoted his life to the work between the fight or the struggle between the good and evil or the light and darkness. A few years before, I started to work with people who are possessed and with attachment, and I never thought about it. I never knew that I can do that. I got a lot of help from my teacher from the Amazon. They were teaching me how to do healing on that, and also with the Jose Joaquin in the Andes. But I was very involved, and I still do, with removing of negative energies, of possession and attachment and akuras and all of that stuff. So to find out years later that my grandfather was doing it gave me two things. One of them is that I thought that I was very special for giving me the opportunity to work on that thing. But the other thing was that I was actually doing the work, continuing to do the work of my great grandfather, allow me to accept the fact that maybe it wasn't a mistake. Maybe I shouldn't be so reluctant to step into that role that is run in the family, that is run in our DNA. Each of us comes to this world for a different purpose. Maybe that's my purpose.
yeah.
Maybe it's not a big deal. Maybe it's just I'm just following what fate or the cosmos wanted me to do. I came out from a very anti-religious background, and I found myself continue to do the work that my great grandfather, who was incredible. I mean, he was a very deep Kabbalistic rabbi, very well known there.
Wow, that's so beautiful. Life is just so fascinating in terms of how things are, connected. And like also, I think that one thing you kind of briefly touched on is that often, you know, because of the way society is right now, it just doesn't at first impression, it feels like it just doesn't seem like an acceptable profession, like you for you to be a healer or to for you to like work in the mystical art sector, it's kind of just like, yeah, okay, but are you gonna get like a real job or something, so like I feel like there's also like that stigma attached to it, right? Like that sense of like, well, yes, like that sounds cool, but is that like a thing? Like, can I do that? It seems too like out there, So like I feel like there's probably lots of people that kind of relate to that dichotomy. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about your time in the jungle in the Andes. What was that like, especially being in New York for so long, which is New York City, it's a big city, and then to go from there to, just right in the middle of nature. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience?
I when I first went, that was in 1997, 23 years ago. It was after 2 years I already was doing this work, the connection to spirit. When I landed in the Andes, I really felt I came home. I never really felt that it's strange or bizarre or any of that. I really felt I'm home. I can't really tell you why. I do believe in past life, so it could be that.
Mhm.
But I really felt home, and I really felt like I know these people. I don't speak Spanish.
Mhm.
I mean, a little bit here and there, but at that time I didn't know at all. But I was communicating with them from my heart, and they accepted me. We had incredible conversation through the heart and through whatever. I don't know how it all happened, but I really felt like I'm coming home. That it wasn't something exotic, something that is different. It's just like there, and and especially with the Amazon, I had a lot of question, what is the Amazon, how it is the Amazon, how big the trees, how big are the rivers. I mean, because when you look at all of that, that experience is an enormous and also frightening. We came with this little Cessna, little plane,
Uh-oh.
a small plane, and we landed on a grass, and they
Wow.
were waiting. The warriors were waiting there with with their dress. I mean, that was many, that was 23 years ago, so they were still dressed up like who they are, the Shuar people.
Mhm.
And then we went on. We landed, and then they took us in a canoe into the river. And it's really like a National Geographic stuff. And after half an hour or so, we landed in some place, and we start walking into the jungle.
Mhm.
They carry all our bags because for us it was impossible. And then we got into that community or a family house, which is where they were, and it was just amazing. It was just so like coming home, and I really believe that each of us as human, we basically animals. We basically connected to nature. We love nature. I mean, where are we going on vacation, right? We're going to nature, right? We're going to the beach. We're going to the oceans. We go to mountains. We go there because we want to be reconnected with nature.
Yeah.
And when you are in the Amazon, I also felt there like I'm home.
Yeah.
I was reduced to the normal size of human.
I love that.
And I think that was so humbling experience. And I also realized how unprepared I was. I was walking. I came over there. Immediately, I took off my shirt. I took off my shoes. I was just like, we are in the Amazon, right? So I started to walk barefoot.
Uh-oh.
Except that we were walking to this hanging bridge over the river, which was so scary.
Mhm.
And I was standing to talk with somebody on before walking on the bridge, except that I didn't realize that I'm standing on a fire nest, a
Oh,
fire ant nest,
oh,
and of course of course, they went all over my legs, and they gave me like a really a good lesson of you can't stand in the forest because you if you stand still, somebody will eat you. You
Oh
always
my,
have to be on alert. But you see, that's the learning. You have to learn the law.
yeah,
It's like you're going to Times Square. You have to learn the how to navigate that stream of pedestrian and car.
yeah,
But for I came like totally, here I am, in the Amazon, and you learn the lesson. But it was, I think that if we want to change our society, if the United States want to become a better place, instead of sending kids to college for 4 years, 1 year they should send him to places like that to
yeah,
live in other countries with other languages to see that English is not the only language, and our um, music and crappy cultures is the only culture that other people live somewhere else, and we have to learn to deal with them and treat them nicely.
yeah,
That they have incredible value of wisdom.
yeah,
That they know that every tree is a library, every tree is a community of plants and animals, and then the medicinal plant and the herbs and the flowers and all of that. We have to send our kids to other countries.
yeah.
There are people in the United States who never left the United States. They never had even passport, and so they think that everything is just like
Yeah.
everything is came out, everything is plastic.
Yeah, or they haven't even left their cities before. There are plenty of people that have never left their city or state. It's so fascinating because in Europe, like when I started traveling early in life because my mom loves to travel, but on my own as an adult, I didn't really start until like my mid 20s. And I remember, when I would go to Europe and sometimes in the summertime with friends, I would meet all these interesting people, and they traveled, as soon as they graduate high school, like they go somewhere, they go to Thailand, they go to Cambodia, they go to Canada, they go somewhere else, and they live for a few months, and they totally immerse themselves in their culture, and then they come back and bring all of that knowledge. And I always thought that was so fascinating that it was so common, like no matter like, and it wasn't just rich kids in Europe that were doing it, it was like everybody. It was a very normal thing to do, so I completely agree with you.
Yeah, because it's impossible to teach
Mm,
young kids who are
yeah.
their diet is burgers and I don't know who's Rihanna or other crap like that, to that the value of hikaros or teaching of song or
Mhm.
dance or being in a place with no electricity and looking at the sky and the moon. But
Yeah.
if they travel, if they meet people like that and they talk to them and they experience their wisdom, it will change their life. We that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to change the or bring more balance to our society in the United States, and
Mhm.
the only way is through experience, because that shamanism is about your personal experience. It's not about teaching. It's not about books. It's not about watching a movie. It's about really experiencing with all your senses, and including the six senses,
Mhm.
to experience the world as a magnificent, marvelous place. So I think that if anybody hear me over there, is to be able to get people, maybe cut the college time for by 1 year and send all of those kids to developing countries to do a service in Africa, in in South America, in East Asia, and all of those places, to help or to be assisting, take all of these experiences with developing countries and help the poor and help. So to do a service year,
Mhm.
and then their world will start to expand, because we can't really give them the experience without change them without their experience.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like that gives me a nice segue into the next part of what I wanted to talk with you about. And it's shamanic journeying. So I think that like you said, shamanism is truly deeply embedded with experience and personal experience. And I find that your way of teaching shamanic journeying was really profound for me. I'm still, I think we share this in common because I'm always well, is that real? Did I just imagine it? I have a lot of insecurity when it comes to this whole venturing into this, world inside of my mind. I don't fully understand it, but I think that the way that you teach it and share, and how much you push for shamanic journeying, in your teachings is really fantastic. So first, can you explain to people who aren't, as familiar with shamanic journeying what it means and how it works? Mhm.
Well, the basis of shamanic journeying is the ability to transcend your consciousness or awareness from what we call the alpha state of mind or the brainwave into a beta, which is a lower vibration, which is similar to the time when you do meditation. After 20 minutes or so, you kind of not sure if you're awake or asleep, or you start to go in between those two states. So the shamanic journey is by drumming or by rattling, by creating that repetitive sound, lower your brainwave, and it quiets the mind, which allow you then to stop dreaming, which is what happened in dream state.
Mhm.
So the idea here is to bring you into a dream state,
Mhm.
and dream state is a is a is a is a mind state that all shamanic or indigenous cultures celebrate. In its core, the idea is that the world that we see or experiencing in our five senses is only one, and it's only one because we are limited. Humans are very limited animals. We hardly hear, and we hardly see, and we hardly taste, and we hardly know how to touch and all that.
Mhm.
If you take any kind of primitive animals like dogs that can smell from distances or see from distances, or bees, or any kind of animals, they develop ability to see more. and
Mhm.
and sometimes when you see a dog or a cat going like that, following something in the air and there's nothing there, they see something that we don't. And
Mhm.
what they see is energies or
Mm.
body of energies. They're like in the same way that we are energies,
Mhm.
that our body is not really a solid, it's all made of water and calcium and other stuff. So we are all moving.
Mhm.
We are shaped in this
Mhm.
form, but in actually we are empty. We are molecules and atoms and that are running. They see the same thing as holograms.
Mhm.
Now, we have a way to look at visions as holograms, but that's what it really is. So, spirit or energies are energies of objects, and we say sometimes that we have spirit animals that are inhibiting the lower world, the world of the mama,
Mhm.
the earth, or we have the spirit of the above, the spirit of the upper world, the masculine, and then we have the spirit of the natural world
Mhm.
that are in a way only illusion,
Mhm.
right? Because it's in our mind we see them as objects and we call them names. So let's just say a glass of water, a glass that we drink wine is really not a glass. It's actually sand, and sand is earth,
Mhm.
right? So basically, we drink from the earth, right? But
Mhm.
we call it glass,
Yeah.
right? So the same thing that when we do journey work and we go through these four consciousness gates,
Mhm.
we able to see through our concentration mind. We can see these holograms, those
Mhm.
energies that otherwise we can't see,
Mhm.
and each of those contain wisdom, contain consciousness.
Mhm.
And so, through our ability to concentrate with intention, we are interacting with the consciousness awareness of those objects or
Mhm.
those spirits. And those spirits can help us or guide us to live better life here on this earth, or give us knowledge that otherwise we couldn't have. So the shamanic work is about learning to transcend from the everyday life, everyday consciousness, to the higher consciousness or a deeper consciousness, to bring information and knowledge and tools to help us heal the physical body, emotional body, spiritual body, and to heal the earth.
I love that. All right, just to go a little bit deeper on shamanic journeying. So, like, I guess mostly, I'll tell you a little bit about how I experience it. So, like, I imagine myself either going up into the upper world, like you taught, or down into the lower world. I go to my favorite place in nature or the spirit world. And so then I kind of just allow my imagination to take over. So, my spirit guide and I have an ongoing debate about whether or not this is real. It is like a debate that happens, and I'm like, but did I make this up or did I not make this up? And then I get like all these like elusive answers. Does it really matter if you made it up? And I'm just like, but it does matter. And they're like, but does it though? So I wanted to talk a little bit about, for those of us that are still, really working through trusting ourselves and trusting this process, how do you, work on this imagination versus spirit thought process? Like, what are your thoughts on that? I'm looking
Well,
for reassurance.
you remember I told you that when I came back the first time from the Amazon, I got into 8 months of depression. The reason why I got into this depression is because I could not decide if it was real or not real, or
Mm,
what's real. And then I decided that this building is not real, and maybe I am not real. Is it real? But I'm real. I can touch. I didn't know, and that was really shaking
mm,
our ability to operate in what I call kind of stupid world, because we believe that what we have or what we see is what it is, and all of a sudden you realize that it was illusion. Now shamans live in these two worlds all the time, and the truth is that it doesn't really matter. I what I came out what I came out after the way I came out of all these 8 months of deliberation and depression was that one day I got so tired of this fight between in myself, and I said that it doesn't matter. What matter is the results. What matter is, does it work? Does it help other people? Or can I help with that information other people? And then I dropped this idea. What I dropped was the preconditioned mind, a gatekeeper, the fear, the ego, what we call the ego part, that prevented us from become a full tool for spirit. So when you talk about it is only my imagination, I'm always asking, why did you
mhm,
choose? Why did your imagination choose this particular vision and not another?
mhm,
We have we can have trillions and trillions of other opportunities to choose,
mhm,
but your mind chose this particular one. So I believe, and that's really what I tell people now, that spirit sent you that. It's not your imagination at all. You are just receiving information. And I think we need to really allow that opportunities for spirit to speak through us
mhm,
without our intervention, without our asking if it's right or not, or this or not, or this or that. Or that. This is the human gatekeeper, logical mind. But the world is much bigger, and spirit are much louder, and if if they chose to show you certain vision, it must be real and correct for this particular moment.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. I feel like that'll definitely help. It helps me, but it also helps. I think it'll help a lot of other people. Okay, so another question is really about, how do you experience energy healing? Like, what do you see flashes? Is it feelings? Like, how do you kind of, like, talk to me a little bit about your personal experience with working with energy?
I used to poo-poo all of that stuff. I used to say, that's not real. But the easiest way to do really is to understand that our body is full of electricity. That's the heat of our body, right? our body is full of molecular atoms, subatoms, all of that thing that are moving all the time. Faster, you get hotter. Slower, you get colder. And so our body is always radiate energy all around. And when we walk with this energy all around us, and we enter somebody's home, we leave energy imprints on that place because energy never goes away, right? It's always energy. One way to do it is to just put the two hands together like that, like in a distance, right? And you could feel the energy between the two. And then if you move your energy, right, you start to get like a little hole in your hands, right? Or if you do that, you can start opening your third eye. Or you can do healing around. I mean, you heard about that practice. It's called Reiki, right?
Yes, 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 yes. Very familiar.
So Reiki is in many ways the basis of it is shamanic work or energy work packaged in different way. Um, Actually, most of healing modalities today, people call them all kind of different names. They are all the roots are from the shamanic healing traditions, like herbs and plants and rocks and crystals and energy and all of that fire. All of it is come from the human experience with nature, and that's what we call shamanic healing. We don't separate them into pieces, and we don't rebrand them because we it will be strange because in the shamanic healing the shamans choose the tools that work for the client, and sometimes it's a conversation, sometimes it's psychotherapy, sometimes it is energy healing hands on, and sometimes it's Reiki, and sometimes it's
Journeying.
journeying, and sometimes it's plants and diet. And so we don't really separate it. We have to be expert in all of those modalities without giving them names, and my take on it is that if you go to Reiki, which absolutely have results, but it's not, sometimes it's not all the person needs, but that's only what the person can give, because it's categorized, it's put them in a category. So the shamanic healing is using everything you have to make a change, and demonstrable change. So it's not divided into different branches. So you need to know a lot and to learn from the experience. And usually spirit do that work.
Yeah, it'll guide you exactly to where you need. I started, with astrology, and then, then started working with crystals, then with Reiki, and then into shamanism. And I feel like shamanism is the perfect, allows me to pull all the tools and use all the things, so I love that. Okay, so now that you have all this wonderful experience, if you could go back to a younger you, first learning all this healing work, what advice would you give yourself?
I would tell myself to trust my gut. Because at that moment, at that time, I never thought I would be teaching around the world. I would never thought that I will write books. That was the last thing I ever thought. I would never thought that I would be a healer. I think that all of it came from trusting my gut or understanding my life purpose. Um, and although I really cared what other people thought of me, at the end, I think that the more important for me was to do what's right. I know that a lot of people carry that burden. They are worried what their families will do, what their families will say, if they can support themselves or not, if it's you know if it's crazy or not crazy. I mean, all of that. My family also had a lot of resistance to that in the beginning.
Yeah.
And rightly so, because all of a sudden, in the middle of all of it, I'm leaving, and
Yeah.
and I left a lot, that I went in 97, and then I went in 98, and then I went 6 years to teach in Hawaii, and
Wow.
then I went for 6 years to teach to organize trips to Brazil, to the Amazon, and
Mhm.
then I started to so it wasn't like it was just like one thing.
Mhm.
I really followed spirit in many ways, if you can look at it this way.
Mhm.
And I did not. I mean, I understood the fear that were for people around me, and especially when I had my advertising agency, I used to disappear into the jungle,
Mhm.
and they didn't know where I was because I had my BlackBerry at that time, and I was
Oh,
texting from the Rio Negro, from the middle of this jungle. We
yeah.
had the one spot where we can do, and they didn't know where I was. I was trying to maintain it. Thank God for technology. But this transition. But I felt really strongly
Mhm.
that I need to do this work, and I didn't know why. I mean, it wasn't like somebody told me that this is what's going to happen 25 years later. If somebody would have told me that, I would just laugh at them. So
Right.
I think that it's the best thing is probably follow your gut. Never allow the fear of others to stop you from fulfilling your life purpose.
Mhm.
Um, and allow people to be afraid, because when you change, they're afraid that something else will change in their life, and they don't like that. I mean, a lot of people are afraid of change. For me, I always wanted change. I was curious. I wanted to know more. And it wasn't that I was ruthless with my family or with my clients. I kept the balance between them, but I
Mhm.
never gave up. I would not go to what I needed to do, or I
Mhm.
felt that I needed to do. I prepared it. I made sure that they are fine, that they have enough resources when I left. Even if I didn't have the money, I always find a way to work for it, or find a way to make deals so I can go and travel, because I traveled a lot. Yeah, but it's really about following your heart, following your gut,
Mhm.
not listening to your fear, because I every time I went, I says, what the hell I'm doing? I'm crazy. Why did I get involved in all of that? This voice is still in me all the time. But like, that's what some of the things that I teach is really to be shamanic warriors. It's never really to recognize the fear, to recognize your limitation, to recognize that, but never give up on your mission on life. And if you have that company that you are pushing and pulling, you do everything possible to be successful.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying in ruthless way,
Yeah.
or on other people expenses,
Mhm.
but that passion that you have for something will demonstrate itself with the way people will buy your product, the way you communicate with this product, and the way you're going to be investing your time in developing, and not getting discouraged for every little thing that happened badly.
I love that. Wow. This was so awesome, Itzhak. It really warmed my heart talking with you as always. I love to take your classes and I love it. So before we go, I always love to ask a little bit more about how you personally feed your soul and how you personally manage, self care. So I have three quick questions to ask you about. So the first one is are there any consistent activities or rituals that you do to maintain a sense of inner peace?
I do yoga at least 3 times a week, which I think that is incredibly important to maintain the agility, the ability to move, balance, and all of that. So I highly recommend to do that. I also, for the last, and I do it for the last 25 years or so.
Wow.
And for the last 25 years, since I started to work, 23 years, since I worked with Jose Joaquin Pineda, I do every Tuesdays and every Friday, I have an altar that I work on. And, I do ceremonies at sunrise, and I light the candle and smoke and flowers, and speak to the direction, and speak to my wakas on the hammer, on the altar, the mesa. So that, and I try to eat well, for a long time I was pescatarian.
Hmm.
Now I eat more meat because I need that. I feel I really need that. But to eat in moderation. There are two things that I do to support myself: is I drink cappuccino
Hmm.
and I eat dark chocolate.
I love it. I love
These are two things that are very important because I believe that cappuccino, which is coffee, is a plant medicine.
it. Hmm.
It helps the brain, it helps the stamina.
Hmm.
And chocolate have this flavoring, or the ingredient that makes you feel love. And love is everything.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. Okay, so who is the most inspirational person you've ever met, and what did they reveal to you that never left you?
I think all my teachers, all my shamanic teachers, each one of them brought me a different aspects of healing or teachings or practices. But I want to say that especially my main teachers, Don Jose Joaquin Pineda, gave me that idea of how to work with the masculine and the feminine energy in power, to totally go for it, not
Hmm.
to do it halfway, but at the same time that you are a warrior is to keep your heart open, which I think that is a great teaching. And he's so grounded in his own tradition. There's no fakeness there. He's just like part of the mountain,
Hmm.
which is a great thing. Ipupiara from Brazil, from the Amazon, was a great influence on me, especially with the idea of that we are all shamans, we are all teachers, we are all came here to heal and teach other people. The, you know, and a lot of the way he worked with people was very influential. But I think also from the Western people, um, I think John Perkins was very influential, and we still in very good connection about the connection between shamanism, spiritual work, and social responsibility, and how one part, the political part, the economical part, influence spirituality, and how spirituality influence the basic of life. And I think that I salute a lot his work and his bringing this consciousness
Hmm.
to big corporations and to us as people to, to give to empower each of us to change the way that we do business or the way we change our life to be able to live more in sustainability and responsibility for
Yeah.
one another and for the greater good.
Yeah.
And I know that many people are talking about it and doing a lot to it, but I think that he's inspirational for me for the work that he's done on behalf of the people of the Amazon, which is also my part of my work too.
Yeah.
Because I truly believe that we must preserve the people, the cultures of the Amazon and the environment that they are in,
Yeah.
because that's the only alternative that we have for this Western industrial life that goes wrong.
Yeah.
We are really destroying our world, and we are not able to protect our grandchildren and children and families in the future. So it is so essential for us to wake up and do whatever we can personally. We must be actively doing things, not just praying.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I definitely think that there's a lot that as individuals we can do to kind of contribute to, preserving, nature, but also preserving the teachings, like some of these teachings are oral and they're not, they haven't been written, and I feel like like we definitely need to preserve that information and that knowledge. We need it. So yeah. Okay, and then my final question was about books. So I know that you're a big reader. So like you've mentioned a bunch of books throughout the course of our talk today, but I wanted to kind of end on what are some of your favorite books?
Well, I have to tell you,
Mhm.
after doing the three books that I did, I stopped
Mhm.
reading. I stopped reading. I just can't. I can't look at the book anymore.
I love that.
I I produced these 3 books, although I wrote them about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all these 3 books.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, I wrote them for about, maybe 10 years on and off. But the last 5, I did all of them in 3, 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I was like really working really, really hard at doing it. So I have a little PTSD from writing.
Yeah.
So I didn't read many books, but I highly recommend to
Mm-hmm.
read Hank Rasselman, The
Mm-hmm.
Spirit Walker, and all his trilogy. Where that's the book that I started with,
Mm-hmm.
and then all John Perkins books, because this is really the foundation
Mm-hmm.
of becoming conscious about the old tradition, the new economy, and the role that we play in destroying it, and how it is important to keep all of those traditions as a blueprint for us to save us, not to save them,
Yeah.
but to save us.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we would never remember there is a way out of this nightmare that we are living in.
Yeah.
So that's very important. John Perkins is very important. Into the Circle by Olga, I forgot her last name, is an amazing book about a woman who is psychotherapist in Siberia that discover shamanism, and that book really inspired me a lot.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of books. Luis Miguel Madrone is a fantastic author, a Native American guy who he's also a doctor and shaman, who wrote about the coyote medicine, which is very, very beautiful. There are so many books that are now. I mean, when I started many years ago, there was only maybe 5 books.
Wow.
Now there's, I don't know. I mean, you have to go to Amazon to see how many books on shamanism.
Yeah.
Maybe like a few thousand books, and one comes every day. But there are plenty of really good books to read.
Yeah.
And they really inspire, and of course my books.
Yes. Yeah. I was gonna get to that. You guys definitely have to check out all of his books. So there's Shamanic Healing, Traditional Medicine for the Modern World. And then there's Shamanic Transformation. So this one I feel like very much was inspirational to me because I love learning about awakenings. And then there's The Gift of Shamanism. These are all available on Amazon. Thank you so much. I love this. I love talking with you. Can you please tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you?
Well, on my website, which is myname.com, itzhakbeery.com, you can find all this information and different workshops and teachings, and I do a lot of Zoom now because of the time. And also on my other website is called Shaman Portal, and Shaman Portal is the hub for all the global shamanic activities, which is part of the my commitment to the spirit of the jungle, to help them spread the word about the importance of indigenous teachings and the environment. And we are now doing a lot of different webinars, bringing people from the Amazon and from many different parts of the world to teach pretty inexpensively, so to spread the word. And then for the New York Shamanic Circle, which is an organization that I was founder of, that started in 1997. So here it is. There's a lot of work that I do, and you can always join me. I hope in person.
Yes. Oh, I can't wait. I want to give you a big giant hug. I can't wait for that. Thank you
Me too.
so much. So thanks everyone for tuning into the Magic Hour. We hope you enjoyed listening. Be sure to check out the show notes at mylittlemagicshop.com for more information on today's guest, Itzhak Beery. We hope to see you again next Sunday. And as always, sending you so much light, love, and magic. Remember, without a dream, you can't have a dream come true. So make sure you're out there making your own magic.